But then we go back into the 1500s and 1600s and show that they knew about it. Yeah, they had been there. They had mapped certain things there that proved out to be correct, such as like Southampton Island. It was a lot more correct from the late 1500s and early 1600s than it was in the mid 1800s. So how do you explain that?
Where is Southampton Island?
Up northern Canada.
Is that near Hudson Bay?
Yes.
You reference in the presentation titled Lazaria Map Collection, that's on YouTube, Harry Hubbard's channel. Just type in Harry Hubbard and Lazaria Map Collection. You'll be able to find it. Harry, you reference a map from 1608 by Matthias Quadus that has some script about an area called Friesland. It's an island. And
correct.
You describe the script, and there's a lot that you've referenced on it, but the script reads, Friesland is larger than Ireland and has been unknown to the ancients. The climate is extremely harsh. Inhabitants don't have any fruits but live on seafood. You can find a maximum daylight of 19 hours. If you could, please tell listeners about Friesland, how it shows up on older maps, where it's located, and where it might be located today.
Well, I called myself a Friesland collector. I wanted maps that had Friesland on them. And it was on the Cornelius Whitfleet, it was on the Gerhardus Mercator, Abraham Ortelius maps, Ramon Mercator maps, and all of these guys were kind of like in the same guild of Dutch and German map makers. They all knew each other, they all trained with each other, and used each other's work. And the thing about Friesland, it was so detailed. By the early 1600s, you had the capital was Bondandia, and you had the Southport, the different bays around it were all listed, and different mountains indicated, and different things like you said about the people who live there. And where it was is actually like a bit south of Iceland, I would say, between Iceland and Greenland. And it wasn't, I don't think it was larger than Ireland. I have no proof of that, or it's just not indicated. But nevertheless, it appears that there was a Friesland, and that it sank, and it could have. The whole area is quite volcanic, and it was in 1948, I believe, where there was a ship called the American Scientist that was loaded with professors and scientists and stuff. That they actually went and took soundings in the North Sea there, approximately where they figured that this Friesland could have been. And what they were expecting it to be 2,500 fathoms. A fathom, of course, is 6 feet. And the area that they went to was 20 fathoms. They found an entire area, I believe it was like 30 miles in diameter, roughly, where the depth of the ocean there was only 20 fathoms, which is, 120, 125 feet or so. And I believe it's quite possible that it sank. We have islands that have sunk in the Pacific and the Atlantic. I think there was one called the Sarah Ann Island or St. Ann Island down in the Pacific, that it was on the maps even in the early 1900s. And it was supposed to be some like solar eclipse. And these scientists wanted to go there to investigate the solar eclipse, that it was going to be like pitch black there. So they went to this Sarah Ann Island, and it wasn't there. It just had vanished. And there's another island in the Pacific while I'm on there that had vanished. It's called Maida, I believe, M-A-Y-D-A, Maida Island, that had been mapped. And its coordinates were well documented, and then boom, it was just gone, vanished. So a lot of the cartographers and scientists, they say, oh, well, Friesland couldn't have existed. It was just a mythical this and that. But why so much detail then? You know, and it was on maps from, I guess, like the late 1400s up until the late 1600s, maybe even into the 1700s. So, and it was on probably 60 or 70 maps. It was well documented and drawn pretty doggone, similar from map to map. It appeared everywhere. And there was another reference I found that recorded that Frobisher, who was a sailor, a captain, that he was actually the only one in modern times that said that he actually saw Friesland. Well, the thing about it is they said, but he didn't. He was actually looking at Greenland. Well, here you've got this seasoned sea captain, and he didn't know where he was at. So that didn't make a lot of sense. I believe he actually saw it, like he says he saw it. But we're going to say that he didn't say it. That's what the powers that be kind of will want to depict. But I was one. I collected stuff that had Friesland on it, and I loved it. I liked the idea that there was a huge island out in the Atlantic, similar to Atlantis. It probably just had an earthquake or a volcano blew and just sunk into the ocean, which is exactly what happened to, I believe it was Maida in the South Pacific.
It's interesting that this island did not have the mystique and timeless folklore of Atlantis that you hear about.
Well, yeah, and it could have. I guess I was trying to bring it about that there were other islands that existed and sunk. In my video, The Shrine, I described several other islands that were indicated or mentioned through the ancient classical history writers that existed, and now they're not there now, like Gorgon. Some of them had really fancy names to them, and they don't exist anymore. And the scholars of modern day, they'll say, well, we don't know where this one was. We believe that this one, like what was the Fortunate Islands or the Islands of Bliss, the Bliss Islands. Well, that must have been the Canaries, but it doesn't appear to. It's just their speculation. Well, nobody knows for sure, either way.
Harry, on an 1862 map, you talk about the area now known as Alaska, but it was once something else. Can you talk about the story that is told about Alaska through these maps?
The Russians had kind of pretty much stolen it from the Eskimo, or not, and from there, when it was a holding of the Russian fur trading company, and the Russians had their fur traders there, and they're like 26,000 or more Eskimo, and the Russians sold it to the Americans, and it wasn't even called Alaska. It was first Alaska was first just the Aleutian Islands, and then it became Alaskan or Russian territory is what it was called on the maps, and then it eventually actually became Alaska. So and that was quite mid-late 1800s that Alaska first appears on the maps as Alaska.
Let's go back to the Hollow Earth, because the maps that you present that show the Bargo Islands is really a fascinating area. I have never seen it, even in Hollow Earth books. They rarely show this view with the canyon in the center. One of the maps, you talk about Gerard Mercator's famous map describing the center of the Arctic region as a dark canyon in the middle of the North Pole. Mm-hmm. There's text that you read on the video, and one quote is, "From the ocean, rivers flow into the pole. There are 19 entrances. The rivers flow northward and empty into a central sea, then empty into the dark canyon, then empty into the inner earth, 33 leagues wide." And that's about 100 miles, the canyon mm-hmm. area. That's pretty big for water flowing down into the inner earth. What have you learned about explorers that have also described this area?
Well, the descriptions became more detailed in later years. That's why I kind of show the Abraham Ortelius map, and then also we go into the Mercator maps and show the Romuald Mercator maps, and then from the 1500s, and then go into the early 1600s with the Matthias Quadus map, because the Matthias Quadus is even more detailed. And the writing, the text that were in these books, these atlases. All those maps come from atlases. They didn't print just a map. The maps came out of atlases. And the pages, the text associated with, like the Bargos Islands and Friesland, etc., they give more detail. And you can tell some of those maps are just covered with script. And the Matias Quadus map, for instance, is Latin. And some of the others, later on, they became, in German or so. But generally, Latin was the language of the maps, of the map makers. And so given that, as time drew on, 50, 60 years, whatever, the descriptions of the people and how they lived, what they ate, how they spoke, whatever, it just became more and more descriptive and detailed. When you're showing somebody these maps and they get the idea that, wow, okay, this is an actual map of this or that, it's more than just somebody just talking or text about something. And a lot of the books they never showed these maps or gave the descriptions that were on these maps. And you found that pretty wild, but it's just what happens. A lot of people don't do their homework, or it's just things that just get past them, and it happens all the time. So